Thanks for joining my session on confidential computing with Always Encrypted with Secure Enclaves. So my name is Pieter. I'm a program manager in the data platform security team at Microsoft. So that's the team that manages all the security features inside Azure SQL database, Azure SQL managed instance, and SQL Server. And I'm the PM for two features. One is called Ledger, which we're not going to talk about today, and the other one is related to Always Encrypted and how you can encrypt sensitive information inside in your database. So the goal of this talk is to give you a short overview how our technology works. And at the end of the session, I will also give you a short demo so that you can see this actually working in real life. All right. Cool. So what was our motivation from Microsoft? We wanted to enable our customers to confidentially store their most sensitive data in the cloud. So we already had a couple of other technologies, but they were not sufficient for our customers. So we wanted to build that technology, and we wanted to protect sensitive data from high privileged users, meaning, for example, database administrators or host administrators. Um, so these people, they should still be able to manage the data, but they shouldn't be able to see the data. To give you an example, in my real life or in my previous life, I was a database administrator. And when I arrived at my customers, I could literally see every single part of the databases. And that's not good. You want to protect sensitive information from these high privileged users. So, but on the other hand, we also wanted to build a system that could still process the queries from the applications and still should support confidential computations. So we started our journey in 2016, and in that version, SQL Server 2016, we released our first version of Always Encrypted, which is called Always Encrypted, and it's really a client-side encryption technology. So everything here inside this box is the client side and is considered as trusted. Everything outside the box, the network, the database engine, is considered as non-trusted. So how does our technology work? If your client application needs to retrieve sensitive information from the database engine where it is encrypted, it's going to ask that specific information in plain text to the client driver, which is used by the application. And that client driver is then going to encrypt that information, and it's going to send it in ciphertext over the network to the database engine. The database engine will then fetch that information and will send it back in ciphertext to the client application. The client driver, again, it's going to decrypt that information and it's going to show it to you in plain text on the database level. Now, it's really transparent. So it's the client driver that is doing all the work, which means that all the information that is inside the database is never exposed to malicious users, to DBAs, to operating system administrators, and so on. So if you don't have access to the encryption keys, you won't be able to see all that information that is stored inside the database. Now, this was the first version that we released back in the days. It is still available in our software, but it is quite limited in functionality. And what I mean by that is you can encrypt that information, but you can't use it, for example, in a where clause in your query. So you can't search on an encrypted column. So you still had the encryption, but you were limited in functionality. And we wanted to address that problem, and we started working on a new version of Always Encrypted, which is what we call Always Encrypted with Secure Enclaves. It's exactly the same principle, so we still have our application, which is considered as trusted. And so the application still sends the data in ciphertext, but now the database engine can make use of a secure enclave. So you probably all know what a secure enclave is. So it's a really protected piece of memory that is used by the database engine, which means that if the database engine needs to do computation on an encrypted column, it's going to delegate that to that secure enclave, which means at that point, our data is or can be safely be decrypted inside that enclave, and we can do computation on top of that. So by leveraging that enclave, we are now, or it is now possible for us to use rich confidential queries. We can now do searching on encrypted columns. You can do pattern matching. You can do range queries like larger than, smaller than on an encrypted column. We can do order by. We can even create an index on an encrypted column. So it's really, yeah, you get much, much more flexibility compared to the first version that we had back in 2016. This is available in the last two versions of SQL Server, so SQL 2019 and 2022, and it is also available in our cloud database, Azure SQL Database. Another advantage that you get by using Always Encrypted with Secure Enclave is what we call in-place encryption. So previously with the first version, if you want to start with an initial encryption, so let's say you want to encrypt one specific column in your table, what we had to do is we had to extract that data outside of the database. We had to do the encryption and then we had to push it back in. So really time consuming, not really secure. So again, by leveraging the secure enclave, the data can stay inside of the database. So we don't need to move it out. The same for key rotation. This data, when we do key rotation, the data can still stay inside of the database. Make sense? All right. So this is how our technology works. Now, what is an enclave? Probably everybody knows what an enclave is, but for those who don't, it's an isolated region of memory inside your database and inside your server. And it's all the data that is stored inside the enclave cannot be accessed outside of the enclave. So nobody has access to that specific piece of memory. And there are two types of enclaves that we in our database technology are using. So the first one is the hardware technology. It's called Intel Software Guarded Extension, or Intel SGX. It means so that we're really under the covers, we're using a physical CPU, an Intel SGX CPU, that will guarantee the isolation of the secure enclaves. We also have another technology which is called virtualization-based security, or VBS enclaves. That's a software-based, and that's available in Windows 2019 and later, and also in Windows 10 and later, right? So what is the difference? So in Azure SQL Database, so our cloud version of the database, you can choose between I want to use an Intel Software Guarded Extension or Intel SGX Enclave, or I want to use VBS. If you want to use Intel SGX, you need to configure a specific type of hardware, which is called the DC series. And then under the covers, we're going to create a virtual machine for you that is using that specific Intel CPU. For VBS enclaves, it's just a software setting that you need to switch on. So there's no hardware dependency. There are some, let's say, more limitations on Intel SGX. For example, you're limited to up to 40 physical vCores, while with VBS enclaves, there is no limit at all. The regional availability, so Intel SGX is limited in number of regions because of that special hardware that we need. So our main regions like US, Europe, Canada, UK South, and Southeast Asia, these regions all have Intel SGX available. For VBS enclaves, it is available everywhere, right? So where's the difference between the two? What should you choose? Should you go for Intel SGX or should you go for VBS? And the only difference is, well, the encryption technology is exactly the same, but the difference is that VBS enclaves do not protect you from attacks from the host OS. Maybe bluntly said, but if you do not trust Microsoft, well, then you need to go for Intel SGX. Then we will never, ever be able to access your data compared to VBS. Why it might be potentially an issue here. Okay, so these are the difference between the two. That was the theory. Let me jump into a quick demo now so that you can actually see how our technology Always Encrypted work. So the demo is built on an Azure SQL database that is using the VBS enclaves. All right, so hopefully everybody can still see my screen. Um, this is a simple web application that I'm using. It's used by an HR department, and as you can see, that website contains pretty sensitive information. So you have the social security number, first name, last name, and the salary of all these people that are working for the company called Contosa. You can simply search on it, and then it's going to search on social security numbers that contains 999, for example. All right. Um, what are the resources that I'm using for this demo? Well, let me scroll down here to, okay, I need to zoom out a little bit more here. All right, here we go. So this is my database, which I'm going to show you immediately in the Management Studio. This is my application, but what I wanted to show you is the Azure Key Vault. So that is a service that is used to store encryption keys. So here under the keys, this is the key that I'm going to use to encrypt my columns inside my database. Now, if you don't have access to this key, like I said, you won't be able to see any information inside the database or in the application. So to give access, here under the access control, I can show you under the role assignments. Let me scroll down a little bit here. Here we go. So this is my account, and I'm part of the Key Vault crypto user, which means I will be able to encrypt and decrypt the information because I will have access to the keys, and the same for my application here as well. All right. Okay, let's jump to the database now. So this is my server where I'm connected to, and this is the table that contains all the employee data. So if I run this select statement as my own login here, then you will see that I can actually see the same information like on the website. So we want to avoid that, right? I'm not I'm not able, or I shouldn't be able to see that information. There are several ways to encrypt that information. You can use the SQL statements, you can use PowerShell commands, but here in our software, we also have a GUI around it, which we called a wizard to encrypt our columns. So that's what I'm going to use. I want to encrypt social security number and also the salary column. And I want to use an encryption type deterministic, randomized. What's the difference between deterministic and randomized? Deterministic means if you have the same value in the column, the encrypted value will also be exactly the same. If you choose for randomized, then and when you have the same value in the encrypted column, and the encrypted value will be completely different. So randomized is a much stronger encryption type compared to deterministic. If you want to use Always Encrypted with secure enclaves, so the newer version, then you will need to choose randomized. So that's what I'm going to do. Oh yeah, by the way, the keys, I forgot to show you this. So the keys are never stored inside the database. What we're storing is the location or the metadata. So where is the key located? So if you look at the properties here, you can actually see that this key here is pointing to is the key that I've just showed the Azure Key Vault. So we're storing metadata. We're not storing the key itself inside the database. That wouldn't be a good idea. Okay, so let me jump back to the wizards. So the encryption keys are already configured, so there's no need to configure to do any additional configuration. I'm not going to talk about the enclave attestation. Yes, I want to proceed. Just click finish. And now the wizard here is going to perform an encryption on social security number and salary column. The reason why I'm able to do that is, like I've showed you, I have access to the encryption key and I have the appropriate permissions to do the encryption. So I will be able to do this. So this will just take a couple of more minutes. There we go. So encryption is done. Now, if I'm connected to the same database, but I'm connected here, as you can see, to the database as a login called Azure Admin that is used by a database administrator. That account doesn't have access to the key, which means if I run this particular query now, I won't be able to see anything related to the encrypted information. So social security number and the salary here, they're completely encrypted. I cannot see it, as I mentioned, because I don't have access to the encryption key. If I go back to the application and I do a refresh here, this will just take a couple of seconds because it needs to reload all the data back in the application. There we go. But the application can still see that sensitive information. And the reason is, again, the application has access to the encryption key. So it's really here the client driver that is doing the encryption and the decryption of that sensitive information. If I go back to my management studio here and I open up another query window where I'm connected here as my own account and I run this again, then I can also still see the information in plain text because this account also has access to the encryption key. So that is how our technology works. Pretty simple and pretty transparent for the application. You just need to make sure that you use the correct driver for your application and that you change your connection string, meaning that you will need to tell the application, hey, I want to use always encrypted here. That's the only thing that is necessary to convert your application. All right, cool. Let me jump to the last slides to wrap up already. So what are our resources? Where can you find more information? This was just really giving a short overview of how our technology works. If you want to know more, this is the resources that you can use. So there is a blog post that explains more in detail how Always Encrypted with secure enclaves work. We have our documentation, which is really, again, in detail and really large. So if you need more technical information with example scripts and stuff like that, go to our documentation. There is also a tutorial that you can use. So it's really explaining step by step what are the things that you need to do to start using Always Encrypted. That is used a lot by our customers that are using this. Data Exposed, it's a YouTube channel that we've set up from Microsoft that explains all kind of different data technologies. And I've also recorded an episode there, so you can watch me on YouTube as well. We also have an Azure SQL or an Azure Security podcast. And if you want to get started with coding as well, using Always Encrypted, we've also have a sample code application that you can start using to filter, not to filter, to start coding and to see what you exactly need to do inside your code to start using Always Encrypted. All right. Well, thank you for joining this short overview. If you have any questions or if you should try that feature out and if you have feedback for me, this is the email address where you can reach me on. Yeah, thanks for joining and hopefully, yeah, enjoy the rest of the conference, I would say.